Hey everybody, Michele Granberg here. Welcome to Positive Energy, enlightening television for the evolving soul. On this show, my guest is Ed Tseng, award-winning coach, best-selling author, and motivational keynote speaker. He's going to share his thoughts on the nature of the mind and how to move past limitations and achieve peak performance. Positive Energy starts right now. Hi Ed, welcome to Positive Energy.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm very happy to have you and get to know you today. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to where you are now.
Sure. I'll start with towards the end of high school. My father said, "You're going to study computers." And I didn't know what I wanted to do, and he was in computers. It was a good field. And started at Rider College studying computers, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. So after 2.5 years, I failed out twice. So I failed out once, I appealed it, they let me back in. I failed out again, I appealed it, and they didn't let me back in. They said sorry. And so at that point in time, it was the lowest part of my life. I felt like I wasted my parents' money, I wasted my own time. I felt like the stupidest Asian on the planet because academics was so important. Well, looking back, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it was then that I followed my passion. And I found a school in Michigan that has marketing and professional tennis management, and I loved teaching tennis at the time. So I enrolled in that program, and the amazing thing is my grades skyrocketed. I went from being in school to being into school.
Nice.
So a lot of people are in school, you're just enrolled, but if you're into school, you want to learn as much as you can. You know, and the reality is there's a lot of people that are in their jobs, but not a lot of people that are into their jobs. In relationships, not into their relationships. So graduated from that program and started teaching tennis at the Princeton Racket Club. And in 2005, I was named Pro of the Year for the USTA. And so I like that story, not because I became Pro of the Year, although it's a great honor, but because I bounced back. And so I think resiliency is such a key part of happiness and success. And it's funny because when I was younger, my father used to say, "Ed, you got to work hard. You've got to work hard." And now my father is 87 years old, and every time I see him, he says, "Ed, don't work so hard." So it's funny how it's come full circle. And so there was no more room for me to grow at the Princeton Racket Club, so I started my own company in '07, and that's when my career really took off, because when you start your own thing, it's your baby. So you put all your time and effort and energy into it. And so I decided to specialize in the psychology of success in addition to creating tennis programs. And from there, I wrote my first book, and it's been on Amazon's top 10 in sports psychology. They sell it every year at the US Open. And now I'm speaking all over the world and doing Skype sessions, phone sessions, and now here I am on Princeton TV.
Yeah, what a journey.
Absolutely.
What a journey to bring you to where you're supposed to be.
Right.
It seems at this point where you really are executing your passion and your purpose in that way. So let's unpack what you do a little bit further. You mentioned the psychology of the mind.
Right.
So say a little bit more about that. What is your take? What makes your take unique in terms of how the mind works?
Sure. And this is very interesting and something I'm very passionate about, because it's something very few people are talking about and teaching in the world. And to me, I think it's the missing link. So if I were to give you a crash course right now in what I teach, it would be saying something along the lines of, I believe that almost everyone, and almost everyone I mean 99.9% of the people in the world, misunderstand where their feelings come from, where their experience comes from. So in other words, where their happiness comes from, where their stress comes from. So those 99.9% of the people in the world believe that something outside of them can affect how they feel on the inside, like the Route 1 traffic, like their significant other, like their children, like their bank account, right? Well, I'm here to say that none of those external things can affect how you feel on the inside. The only thing that can affect how you feel on the inside is your own thinking in the moment.
Yeah.
So from a low state of mind, oh, I just lost my job. High state of mind, what a great opportunity to follow my passion and start that business I've always wanted to. Low state of mind, oh, my wife always gets on my case to do things. High state of mind, thank goodness I have a great wife to help me get my things done. So nothing outside of us can affect how we feel on the inside, period. But we live in a world where 99.9% of people live that way, so it's easy to get caught up in it. But back in the day, everyone thought the world was flat, and somebody comes along and says, hey guys, I think the world is round, and they thought he was insane. So just because everyone believes something or lives a certain way doesn't mean it's true.
Right. Yeah, perhaps it's time to evolve our thinking about thinking.
That's right.
In that way. So I imagine for some people it is kind of a aha moment or a radical moment when you say this. How do you guide people to notice what it is that they're thinking and when their thinking is limiting them? What's your way of helping them recognize that, or do you?
Well, I try to keep it as simple as possible because thinking is the only thing that can get in our way. So even thinking about what I teach too much will slow down your learning.
Yeah.
So I would simplify it and I would say that what we think, we feel, right? What we feel doesn't come from anything outside of us. So everything we think, we feel, even if the thinking's ridiculous. That's why when you wake up from a bad dream, it's like, whoa, it felt like it really happened. And physiologically, it did happen, but you were just lying in bed. So the more that they see that their feelings and their experience in every moment is coming from their thinking in the moment, they feel empowered, because otherwise, if you think it's coming from outside of you, you're going to be a prisoner of that situation until that situation changes, which it may never change.
Yeah.
You know, if
you're going to feel powerless.
That's right. And if you're an athlete and you think that big crowd is making you feel nervous, well, you can't tell that big crowd to go away. But if you truly realize that, oh wow, from a low state of mind, that crowd's making me feel nervous. But from a high state of mind, it's exciting, right? So from a low state of mind, my car's a clunker. From a high state of mind, my car's a classic. They don't make them like they used to. So life is 100% perspective, and perspective is essentially what we're thinking about in the moment.
Right. So I'm going to just repeat, those are some great key points there. There was just a lot of teaching in what you just said. So it's our thoughts that come first and the feelings come second.
That's right. Thought is the source. But a lot of people say, change your behavior, right? Well, behavior will change as a byproduct of understanding how the mind works. You know, there was an athlete I was working with recently. She's a swimmer. And her mother said, oh, tell her to change her body language when she's, you know, on the starting blocks. She's, you know, biting her nails and doing this. And I said, well, I'm not going to. I said, but I will tell you this. When she starts to learn about the mind, she'll naturally have different behavior. And that's why you see a lot of athletes in practice. They look great. They're crushing the ball. But then they say, okay, go play a tournament. And they're like, oh, right, they're tight, right? That behavior is coming from tight thinking. So tight thinking creates tight bodies.
It's all connected.
That's right.
Yeah, mind, body, emotion,
That's
and,
right.
and it shows up in ourselves, and that's a great indicator that we're having a kind of thinking that's not really serving us, I guess, and it's time to take responsibility for our own thinking in a really empowering way. So what do you say, how do you describe the ideal state of mind then? What words do you use to say if we were in that, you said tight state of mind wouldn't be where, so is it like soft, loose, open state of mind? Or
and in fact, that's
positive doesn't really describe it completely.
No, it doesn't. And it's funny you ask me that, because I usually ask others that. I've probably asked thousands of people that, from elite athletes to business rock stars and performers of all levels. So I would call it the zone, right? Flow. But the words I would describe are effortless, peace of mind, clarity of mind, focused, motivated, and sometimes even an out-of-body experience. You know, I see athletes all the time say, wow, I was so in the moment and in the zone that I didn't even realize the match was over. And I felt like I was floating and almost observing myself. And it felt like I was a flowing river. And that's beautiful. And people essentially want to be happy, right? And so why would we do something that's not serving us and taking our enjoyment away? I'm working with an Olympian right now who just qualified for Rio. And she said to me, she's from Mexico, and she said to me, Ed, at Mexican Nationals, that was the biggest competition of my life. And because I've been working with you, I've never felt more calm and confident and at ease in the biggest stage of my life.
Wow.
And that's the byproduct of understanding the mind. I didn't give her any strategies or techniques on how to get to that zone, because to me, that zone is our true nature. If you look at young children, they're in the moment. My daughter, when she was trying to walk, she didn't take a couple steps and fall over and say, oh, I didn't walk yesterday either. Maybe I'll never walk. She just got back up. She's resilient. So if young children are resilient, that's how we're born. And as we get older, it's not that we're lacking it, it's that we're blocking it because we start believing those silly, negative, and interfering thoughts, insecure thoughts that we have.
Got it. So when you work with people in coaching, it's not so much about specific techniques per se, it is mostly about understanding the nature of the mind, and then naturally, spontaneously, what occurs from there is people they change their perspective.
Exactly.
And, I was going to ask you how you define peak performance, and I'm hearing you say it's about being in the present moment and in that flow, and then your body, I guess, responds at its best once you get out of your way, get you out of your head. So how do you...
Yeah, that was actually beautifully put.
Okay, thank you.
It's basically allowing people to trust their skills and their training. My friend won the CrossFit Games, and after she won, I said, how did you do it? She said, actually, it was pretty easy. While I was competing, it was like I kept telling myself, over the past 12 months while I was training, it was like the movie was being filmed. And now during competition, all I have to do is hit play. So that's another way to say that she just trusted her training over the past year. But everyone else who doesn't have the strong mindset, what do they say? Oh wow, this is where it matters the most. I really need to do well. Well, I feel tight just saying those things. But she enjoyed the process and she trusted her skills. Her body knew what to do, but your body won't do what it knows if your mind is cluttered and you're stressed and focused on the negative stuff.
So it's about having a calm mind in some ways, which is just, I guess, clearing away some of the fearful and stressful thoughts, which we can feel in our bodies.
Right.
And then what's left is that more optimum state of mind, or that higher mind that you were really talking about. So that's the barrier, that it's our own minds.
That's right. Thinking's the only thing that can get in our way.
So you work with different sets of people. I know that you could work with everybody, certainly, but you work specifically on mental challenges with athletes, as you mentioned, as well as business leaders, as well as students,
right,
that you mentioned. So I'm sure that performance is performance in some general way, but can you think of any specific ways or examples or specific challenges to those three sets of people that you could talk about?
That they have in common?
Yes.
I would say insecurity is one of them, and confidence. We all get insecure sometimes, and we all lose confidence sometimes. Motivation is also a pretty big topic there. But ultimately, it actually makes me laugh because I work with so many people in areas that I know nothing about. So I work with fencers, I work with swimmers, basketball players, rock star CEOs, running major corporations. I've worked with someone trying out for the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. But I don't need to know about those specific areas.
Right. You have to know human beings.
I have to know how
you
the
know
mind
their
works.
psychology.
That's
yeah.
right. And so really, oftentimes people come to me with a laundry list of challenges. And even though I listen to them, I really don't care about them because I know the solution's always the same, going to the source, which is the mind.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's depression or anxiety or anger or lack of confidence. Those all come from the mind. And once you see how the mind works, it applies to everything on that list.
Good. Well, that's great. That answers my next question, sort of, which was, do you see differences? But more so than not, you're saying you were working with the universality of the human condition, of the human experience.
Yeah, they're principles.
We're all in this in the same way, putting our pants on one leg at a time.
That's right. Exactly.
So that's great. Is there any other beautiful stories that you have in terms of people that you've worked with that have really stood out for you and maybe been defining moments in your career as well as in theirs?
Sure. I actually remember giving a lecture at the Princeton Public Library, and normally my routine is after I give a talk, I'll have dinner or have a meal afterwards, either with people or by myself. So that particular day I was by myself, and I walked over next door to the Witherspoon Grill, and I was eating in the bar area, and there was a table next to me that was empty and another table that a gentleman was sitting at. And so I look over, and he's set this huge plate of food. And I jokingly looked over and I said, "Hey, you're eating like a king, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah." Well, we got to talking, and it turns out that he was a former hockey player. And when I met him, he was in a 6-year deep depression. So we're talking therapy, medication, and nothing was working for him. And I could sense his sadness and his depression. And I felt bad for him, so I gave him a free informal coaching session right there in the Witherspoon Grill. And at the end of the conversation, I gave him my business card and I said, "It was great talking with you. Let me know if I can help you in any way." About a week later, he called me up and he left me the nicest voicemail I've ever gotten. And he said, "Ed, I have to tell you something. The night that I met you is the first night that I can remember in the past 6 years that I went to bed smiling and I woke up smiling." He said, "I've felt like that ever since. I'm noticing colors in the world now. I never noticed them before. I'm noticing leaves on the trees." He said, "I never noticed them because I was living in my depressed world. And after talking to you, I realized that I wasn't depressed for 6 years. I was just thinking depressing thoughts, and it was like a broken record, and I was living in that world." He said, "Now I realize that my depressed feelings were coming from depressed thinking. And it's not that I don't feel depressed feelings anymore. It's just that when they do pop up, I know it's coming from me, not my life or my situation. And if left alone, they disappear pretty quickly. Kind of like a beach ball underwater. If I want it to float, it naturally floats up." So he said, "Now I realize that when I'm feeling depressed, I will naturally reset the same way that if I cut myself, I'll form a scab. I don't need to make myself form a scab. So my body has this intelligence that heals itself." But most people don't know that, so they try to fix it or try to make themselves think positively. To me, that's our true nature. We'll naturally think more positively when we don't care about those negative thoughts.
We're born that way.
That's
We're
right.
born thinking more positively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My daughter and I were walking at sunset down at Long Beach Island last weekend, and she's full of love and energy and in the moment. And as we were walking away from the beach, she saw a couple horseshoe crabs. And I said, "Okay, Eva, it's time to go home for dinner." And she says, "Okay." So she looked back at the beach at the horseshoe crab, and she goes, "Bye, horseshoe crab, I'll miss you." Yeah. So that's how we're born. And unfortunately, a lot of us condition ourselves, or we get conditioned by our parents, who we spend a lot of time with, or other people, and it takes away from that childlike state. But the good news is, as you can see with this guy who was depressed for 6 years, it can come back in an instant. It's the same way that when the cloud covers the sun can peek out in an instant. But if people don't realize that, then they'll try to blame an external thing or wait until their life circumstances are perfect, which could take a while. Because the reality is, if money could make you happy, everyone here in town would be skipping down Nassau Street. Right. But I know plenty of people who are depressed, who have all the money in the world. I also know plenty of people who are in debt, who are totally secure. So it's not the external stuff.
Again, it's not what's out there.
Never.
It's not to point our fingers out there. It's to take it.
That's right.
It's all in here.
Happiness is an inside job.
Happiness is an inside job.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all about that inner dialogue.
That's right.
So you're right. I'm sure it's not that it magically for that gentleman got completely easier from that point forward, but he now had a complete turnaround.
Yeah, he was operating from a different platform.
Yeah. His operating system was beginning.
That's right. I
to
gave
change.
him a reboot.
He turned it off.
That's right.
Turned it back on.
Exactly.
Gave him an upgrade.
That's right.
And those are tools for life, because you're right. The quality of our life is equal to the quality of our thinking.
That's right.
When you really kind of look at it that way.
Yeah, and I gave him 0 strategies and techniques. I just I gave him an understanding of where our experience comes from in every moment, and from there everything changed.
So do you tell people also that it's habitual, that our thinking can be habitual, that we think the same thoughts because we've always thought the same thoughts?
Absolutely. There's some scary statistic that I heard that we have something like 10,000 thoughts a day, but 90% of them are the same as the day before.
The same thoughts, and most of them might be negative either.
That's right.
On top of being
that's why you see people
habitual.
That's why you see people, complaining at Whole Foods. "Oh, this cashier is taking so long." Well, those same people complain about, "Oh, it's so hot." Oh, and then in the winter they say, "Oh, it's so cold." Well, it's a habit. But that's good news that it's a habit and not how we're wired.
Yes. Thank goodness a habit can be changed. It takes some work, but it can be changed.
Doesn't have to take work, though.
It doesn't. That's also a belief, right? That takes time, it takes work, and that you got to keep plugging away at it? Not necessarily.
Well, this Olympian that I'm working with, she said, before working with you, Ed, I tried to control my thinking and feelings and even my performance during competition. She said, now I know it's not necessary, and I'm setting personal records every competition.
That's great.
Yeah, so effortless.
So this kind of transformational work or way of thinking really could ripple out into the world when you think about it. If every individual is taking responsibility for the nature of their thinking, if everybody did that, how do you see that in terms of the bigger picture, I guess, in terms of the world, what it could possibly do for all of us?
Sure. Well, you look in terms of, people doing bad things, right? And I tell people, just because you have a thought doesn't mean you need to act on the thought. Mm-hmm. So, most schools have bully experts now, and if you look at it, they're just trying to tell the bullies to change their behavior. So they're trying to have the tail wag the dog. They're not going to the source of where that behavior is coming from. Right. So if I were to go into a school and talk about bullying, I would say that when a bully is in a low state of mind, they're going to feel insecure and think they need to bully someone to make themselves look good or respected. That same bully from a high state of mind, it wouldn't occur to them to bully anyone. Yeah. So does that affect the world as a whole? Absolutely. I've given talks in prisons. I've given a talk to individuals recovering from addictions yesterday. And so what they start to realize is that even though a thought feels real, doesn't mean it is. Radiohead, the band, has a lyric that says, just because you feel it doesn't mean it's there. Yeah. And so the more people realize that, wow, I shouldn't be acting from that insecure state, then I think that would solve so many problems, from wars to divorces, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I could absolutely see how that would ripple out, stemming all from our faulty thinking and our conditioning.
Yeah, in fact, when we're in a low state of mind, our IQ is lower, so that's not the time to have an important conversation or make an important decision. Once we start to feel better, once that beach ball rises back up, we'll know what to do and what to say. Mm. So it's a very different paradigm.
It's non-judgmental when we do this as well, questioning our usual status quo in our own heads, the stories that we tend to replay, and asking ourselves, is that really true? Or
That's right.
Do I really want that to be true? Or is that going to serve me,
right,
in some way?
Absolutely. People say, don't believe everything you hear. I say, don't believe everything you think.
Right. So do you ever recommend meditation, or is it or something circling around that gets people, because if they're too agitated and they're overthinking, asking them to step back might be a bit of a leap for them. So what do you usually recommend, or is it more moving meditation that you might recommend for people?
Now you're getting warmer. I used to meditate every night.
I read your mind.
I used to meditate every night when I got into bed, but I don't anymore. And people often ask me if I do meditation, and I tell them that there's a big difference between the act of meditation and the state of meditation.
They're two different zip codes, two different animals.
That's right.
That's why.
So if you're thinking about meditating, you're not meditating, right? If you're thinking about how you're sitting, how you're breathing, is the room dark enough, you're not meditating. Once you forget about the technique, guess what? You're meditating because you're in the moment. So going back to you saying, when people have this agitated thinking and mindset, a friend of mine once said, if you meditate, you may be at peace for 15 or 20 minutes, but then you go back out into your agitated life and you're going to feel agitated the rest of the day. So it's kind of like having a pot of boiling water on the stove. You may take the lid off and release some steam for 15, 20 minutes, but then you put it back on, it's going to boil again, right? So for me, the reason why I don't meditate anymore is because I feel like I'm in that state of meditation throughout my day. Mm-hmm. And of course I have my peaks and valleys like everyone else, but because I have a deep understanding of how the mind works, my highs are higher now and my lows are not as low, and they don't come around as often. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because I not only feel it and see it in my own life, but I've seen miracles happen with my clients.
Beautiful. Yeah, so it's working more on the fundamentals, right? Kind of getting back to basics in terms of shifting who we are, how we see ourselves, and how we see the world, and everything else sort of is a symptom of that, kind of stems from that.
Yeah, well, the world we see comes from our thinking,
right?
We don't see the world like it's a camera. We actually see the world like we're a painter with a paintbrush, and we're creating
a filter.
The world we see by our thinking in the moment.
So Tell us what you're up to in the world currently, a little bit about the life of Ed currently professionally. You have a book that you wrote, you do a lot of speaking engagements, I've seen you, and different programs, so
Right.
touch on that.
Well, it depends on the day, but I do a lot of phone, Skype, and in-person consulting, coaching sessions with people, from athletes, business professionals to students, and I do a lot of speaking. Now with technology, I'll be in Milwaukee next week recording an online course, pitching it towards about 80,000 athletes all over the world. So it's great to use technology to expand my reach and help more people. And I'm also having a blast with my family. I have 2 children. My daughter is 3 and my son is 1.
Oh, this is the time to really enjoy them.
And it's funny,
Yeah.
speaking of mindset, my daughter turned 3 on Father's Day, and everyone said, "Oh my goodness, didn't the past 3 years fly by? I can't believe she's already 3." And in my mind, I'm going, actually no, because I've been in the moment with her.
Yeah.
And so when you're in the moment, the game slows down. It's like if you're a tennis player, it is timeless.
Yeah.
If you're a tennis player and you're in that zone, the ball looks bigger, it looks like it's coming slower, the court looks bigger, and it's not any different, but your perception makes it seem different. So everyone says, "Oh, this week flew by. Oh, this year flew by." But for me, it's not the case.
Well, they're making it so. They're deciding that without realizing it by reinforcing that and
Right.
saying it. Or we could say, "I have plenty of time. I'm in the moment. I'm in this, this extended, rich moment, and
That's
just
right.
be in it.
Yep.
Be present to it."
Yeah, I mean, I was doing the dishes the other day and I caught myself happy and humming and singing, and I hate doing dishes. But the reason why it was a great experience for me is because I was in the moment, right? I put my heart and soul into every dish, and it seems silly to say, but that's the feeling that we're all looking for. And if I can find that doing dishes, we can find that in anything.
Yeah. So it has so much potential, this work, in helping people in so many ways, and really bypassing all the complications that we tend to think of that we can come up with. It helps to really bypass that. So what's your greatest, what are you most proud of or most grateful for with what you're doing right now?
Most proud, most grateful. I think just grateful for being able to teach what I teach. Obviously grateful for discovering this and learning this, but the opportunity to help people, because ultimately we all want to be happy. And if there's people that are struggling and suffering and I have, the missing link, why not help as many people as you can? And the truth is, oftentimes people read my articles on the Huffington Post and they call me and I offer them my services, but they can't afford my services. So I've never had someone who couldn't afford my services that I never gave a free session to anyway. And so that's where I operate from, because I know that it'll come back to me in some way. And if it doesn't, I already feel better because I at least attempted to help someone.
Very nice. So how can people reach you if they want to work with you, or if they just want to check out your information?
Sure. I have a website. It's edtseng.com, and my email is ed@edtseng.com, and my phone number is 609-558-1077. I'm easily accessible and happy to help or answer any questions.
And you're right here in the Princeton area.
I live in Lawrenceville.
Not all my guests are right here. You're
Is
in
that right?
Lawrenceville, yeah. Go New Jersey.
I'm in town, almost every day.
Great, perfect. Well, thank you. I'm sure that this has inspired people. Any final hopeful message that you'd like to leave everyone with?
Well, you said hopeful, right? So hope
Yes.
to me is an acronym, HOPE. Hold on, possibilities exist.
That's beautiful. Hold on, possibilities exist. Great. Thank you, Ed Tseng, for being on Positive Energy. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Great. Another great show is wrapping up. Thank you for watching. I hope you're revved up, motivated, and ready to rock and roll. Thank you for watching. Join me next time on Positive Energy.